And some scholars even propose that certain myths express precisely this notion of gods being imported into a religion, or even specific cults of gods seen as foreigner to a culture, eventually included into a pantheon or into a formed religion. And I think the best example is a god I have spoken about a few times, especially concerning his cult, and that is Dionysus. Dionysus was seen by the Hellenic cultural world as a foreign god. There's been several studies, and so far the likely origins of Dionysus point to have been in trace. But the myths, the mythology itself, portrays him as a foreigner, and his cult being widely frowned upon and even prohibited among the Hellenic cultural space, and the god himself not having been included in the official pantheon of gods until much later. I mean, the Bacchae or Bacchae, the ancient Greek tragedy written by Athenian playwright Euripides, shows the gruesome, primeval and shamanic brutality of the Dionysian cult. The god himself and his cult was not permitted inside the cities, inside the walls. Only much later it was included in processions to the god, and then later on into the official pantheon, but transformed, shaped into what the ancient Greeks thought to be acceptable, and thus Dionysus losing much of his original attributes as a god of vegetation and shamanic ecstasy. But I've spoken of this, of Dionysus in another video, in more detail, right? But in the mythology itself, he is born of a relationship between a mortal woman and Zeus within the mythological past, before the new myths having been written down. So he was a new god added to later myths. The legends also speak of him coming from the east with a band of followers. He does not come from the Hellenic cultural world, and yet he became one of the most important and most worshipped deities in the ancient classical world. And by no means Dionysus is the only god to have been seen as a foreign god to the ancient Greeks. Take the example of other gods who later became Athenian gods, whose birthplaces lie outside of Athens, such as Aphrodite, called Kypris, Lady of Cyprus, Kypros, right? Or in the 5th century before the Common Era, with the influx of Thracian immigrants, which led the cult of the huntress goddess Bendis being introduced to Athens, to the Athenians. So this goddess shared many of the attributes and functions of the Greek goddess Artemis,